Hello, Lord Titus here, and today we have the second video on the Ultimate Doom stack that can be created in Total War Warhammer 2. Now, as I mentioned, we are going with the vampire counts. As you can see up here, we're playing as the Von Carsteins because of that lovely bonus weapon strength for embedded vampires. However, there is an additional benefit to it in the form of the unique building in Castle Drakenhof, which I won't say isn't essential for building this particular army, but it makes the whole thing that much easier. So the building in question is this one, Mausoleum of the Mad Count. Massively reduced recruitment cost for vampires, which when coupled with other abilities and effects means that I can in fact recruit vampires from here for free. Well, yep, so that's the main, and also at a very, very high rank indeed. So that is why vampire counts, the Von Carsteins, are the ideal sub-faction for vampire counts for this. So, who have I got? My first gut instinct was to roll with Isabella Von Carstein for this one, because she gives a nice melee attack and melee defense buff to both. Yeah, there we go, start retinue. It's a very, very nice melee attack and melee defense buff to embedded vampire heroes in the army, which, as you can see, is what this army is made out of, just a ton of embedded vampire heroes. However, having actually played around with it a bit, I did discover some vulnerabilities in that. The first and foremost being that she doesn't have siege attacker, and therefore every time I wished to attack a fortified settlement I had to wait a turn to produce war machines and equipment before I actually could launch the blooming attack. So instead here I have gone, as you can see, for a Strigoi Vampire Lord, no, sorry, Necrach Vampire Lord, who I have named Dumb King in honour of the Slan Mage Priest who wielded the Sword of Cain and got me started on this whole process. So, without further ado, what do we have? Well, we have a Necrach Vampire Lord. He has Trickster's Helm, although Hour of Destiny equally valid here. Dominating Sword of Cain, always, just kind of necessary for any Doom stack like this. Talisman of Preservation for a 17% ward save. Black Periapt. Now, the Black Periapt is one of those items that I have a lot of in this army. Partially for the extra winds of magic that it produces, which is a lot. It basically gets a free extra massively powerful arcane conduit, but also because of the reduced magic resistance to all local enemy armies, which is just kind of insane. Then we have Dread Incarnate for -4 enemy leadership in all local enemy armies, which all the characters in this army have, which is the main reason why this army is here. It's because it nukes enemy leadership before we even start fighting, and therefore I win the battle before actually having to start fighting it. Variety of traits that I carefully farmed over the course of getting the campaign map to look like this. I have, to prepare for this video, I have deleted all of the other armies I've fielded in this campaign in order to just get the base cost of this army down, because when I was running it normally, this army was up to 25,000 dark magic per turn as cost, and while that's fine, it does rather distort the actual what it looks like, so I've just gone for the basic cost here just to show you all. And then skills wise, so on the lower tree we have Restless Dead, always a very good one to get. Bonus movement range, always nice. Bonus replenishment and bonus replenishment and bonus ambush chance, both extremely useful. Replenishment less so than ambush chance in particular, because you will often find that it's actually quite difficult to get enemies to fight you when you're fielding an army that's this strong, and ambush can be the best way of actually getting them to participate. Immortal Horror, always nice just in case, and bonus vampiric corruption is always a plus. So, melee abilities. We have the Hunger. All of these have the Hunger. It's just such an amazing ability. Regeneration for as long as you're in melee combat, when melee combat is pretty much the only game in town. is extremely nice. Bonus melee defense, melee attack, and health. Don't worry about terror, because the zombie dragon already causes terror, therefore that is completely redundant. And then dark protection for a slight bonus to damage resistance, which on top of 57% ward save already, should make you more or less immune to damage. Then we have Cyanosia for bonus Winds of Magic. We have Wild Heart and Life Leeching for even more bonus Winds of Magic. And then we have these two. So, the reason that I've gone for a Necrach Vampire Lord over all of the rest of them is twofold. Firstly, it is for the variety of different passives they get on their casting. Secondly, they have Greater Arcane Conduit, which is just really helpful. And thirdly, it's for the reduced cost of Invocation of Necrach. The overwhelming majority of damage that this army will deal will be dealt by magic, and all of the vampires are just better at dishing out damage than any other Vampire Lord type. So the only exception I can think of would be the Lamian Vampire Lord with her shadow magic, but even so, there's plenty of shadow and death magic in here, then that's not necessary. And the reason for that is when you have an army of single entity units like this, you will have a very hard time getting enemies to line up for the good old-fashioned Wind of Death trick that makes the vampire count so powerful in any other standard army. Hence why I've gone for the Vampire Lord, which gives the maximum amount of healing. In addition to all of this, he has a zombie dragon, so he has Siege Attacker. Siege Attacker, and therefore can just go straight into cities without needing to actually wait to build equipment that I don't need. I haven't bothered with any of the red tree, because none of these apply to vampires, and it's not worth putting in that many points just to be able to get bonus leadership, and if you put in even more points, bonus melee attack for units within 40 meters. It's just not worth it. No enemy is going to be dueling you for too long in combat with this army, except for immortal lords like Ungrim Iron Fist and Gotrek, and both of those will simply be beaten down by this many vampires. So that's why I've chosen the Dumb King over Isabella von Carstein or any other Vampire Lord, because their main purpose is healing and magic, and these various characters do not need any bonus melee attack or melee defense. They've all got high melee attack anyway, and when there's this many of them, if I get into a single entity versus single entity duel against something that's unbreakable and therefore doesn't just shatter and run, there are enough of them that I can just power through them from all sides, because in single entity duels, the one with the most single entities does tend to win. Then we have our Necromancer. He has Book of Assure, just for more magic. He has Gunnarsson Kron for more income from post-battle loot. He has a Potion of Healing, so I don't have to waste magic healing him, although in general I don't feel like that's particularly necessary, as he is mounted on his Corpse Cart with Unholy Lodestone, and thus will be receiving a huge amount of passive healing as a result of Master of the Dead and Corpse Cart. The main reason that the Necromancer... There's two main reasons the Necromancer is in the army. First, he is there for some free healing without requiring magic, so if these guys get injured badly during a battle, they can just fly over to him and just sit around regenerating some health without needing to pour more magic or use their abilities. And secondly, I do need a unit on the ground to prevent these all from just immediately suffering army losses and breaking. So that's why he's here. As you can see, I've got two Screaming Banners, and these are equipped on the Necromancer and the Vampire Lord, just for that little bit of extra reduced leadership. So all enemies in the local region immediately suffer -80 leadership. And then, because all of these characters cause fear, unless they got immune to psychology, they will then all be taking an additional -10 leadership from fear. And then the Screaming Banner will then cause an extra -4 leadership for anyone close to these two. For the Necrach Vampire Lord, it's more just a little bit of extra oomph. He doesn't really need the help. But for the Necromancer, it's a defense mechanism as much as anything else, as is the Tormentor Sword. Even with all of these abilities, he's still not a great fighter, and therefore it's just 2 options to help him get out of trouble nice and quickly. Low ward save, but the difference between this army and the army of Lizardmen that I went over last time is that this army is much less likely to actually be forced to be engaged in combat. This army is much more about just using magic to rain destruction down on people. And so, I mean, as you can see, 450 power reserve, plus all of these characters have Arcane Conduit. We have a greater Arcane Conduit, and if we look at these, we have a whole load more Black Periapts and other items to boost magic. Boost the availability of magic. So, more Black Periapts, Rod of Flaming Death, just a bit more firepower, and then with this army, I haven't been so worried about getting the exact right magical items to increase resilience, because in practice, vampires are rather squishy, but they regenerate health so fast that it's not really so much of an issue, thanks to Immortal Will, and therefore I haven't really focused on maxing out the effectiveness of their defences when they can just heal any lost health generally. Magic wise, so this is one of the death mages. So she has Fate of Buna, which is alright as a spell. Purple Sun of Xerius, which is probably one of the better death magic spells, which is why it's on my Vampire Lord as well as here. Arcane Conduit, Spread Corruption, a whole load of vampiric corruption in this region is always good. And Doom and Darkness, minus 16 leadership. Basically, if I am facing off against an enemy unit, I can just instant break them with Doom and Darkness. So there's that, and then there are the Shadowcasters. So, again, Black Periapt. So the way I've named them, if they are a sorceress, they have Black Periapt. If they are a witch, yep, Doom Witch, they have the Wand of Jet, which I have a ridiculously huge number of copies of in this particular campaign for no particular reason. But anyway, Shadowcasters, how are they spec'd? So we have similar items as discussed with Black Periapt, and then we have similar upgrades on the melee combat tree, similar upgrades on the Spread Corruption, and then spells. I haven't worried about Melkor's Mystifying Miasma. I've gone real important big ones are the Penumbral Pendulum and Pit of Shades, as well as, of course, Arcane Conduit. Whole load of extra magic reserves just to improve it all a bit further. So, yes, the Pit of Shades is the primary way in which this army tends to do damage, because, again, I can't tend to reliably get enemies lined up in a nice way for Penumbral Pendulum to have its maximum effect, but it is very easy to get them blobbed up for me to use Pit of Shades. So that is how this army is really designed to work, and also if I can get them blobbed up, Purple Sun of Xerius, Doom and Darkness, any of the above will all work nicely, even against fearless enemies and fearless dwarves in particular. So, just do a quick battle just to demonstrate how this army actually does things. I think it will seem rather familiar. So, unfortunately, to get this in the right place, none of the armies particularly wanted to be near this army, so I'm just going to show you a quick little go against this Dwarven army. Remarkably, and this should really say something about quite how courageous dwarves are in this game, even though they're taking minus 80 leadership, they're still sitting pretty with 15 leadership on the Longbeards, and I mean they will all subsequently lose. Well, they won't lose more leadership because they have immune to psychology, but they will subsequently lose more leadership as a result of Screaming Banner and being near such strong enemies. So anyway, let's hop right in and see how it goes. Okay, here we are. So this battle is not going to take a very long time, so I thought I would just organise these nice and quickly. Good to keep the Necromancer nice and far back, as he does not have the same sort of combat ability as literally anyone else in the army. Yep, Dumb King, I want you to deal with him, and them, and them. Oh my lord, I'm not good at clicking things today. And yeah, and then we're just gonna let these guys loose all over them. And we'll bring them up. So yeah, as you can see, yeah, loads of Winter Magic power reserves, very little issue with any of that. Let's just drop the Sword of Cain, because it's always fun. And yeah, then we're just gonna pile into them en masse. So the other thing that this is good for is holding enemies in place. For some races, Pit of Shades can double reasonably well as a replacement for some things like Net of Amentok and the Law of Light spells and other spells to hold things in place, because it does prevent things from moving. Doesn't necessarily work perfectly for that, but it can be very nice. Yeah, can be very nice on fast-moving enemies, especially when they are trying to run away. So how has this organised it? So yeah, so the thing is, it never quite organises these in the way that you want it to. I'm not sure if there is a way to get it to automatically sort of arrange them by name. Haven't checked that out. But yes, so as you see, some of them are Doom Witch, some of them are Doom Sorceress, mostly because I didn't have enough Black Periapts for all of them. If I did, they would all have Black Periapts. But yeah. And yeah, I mean, you can see that even though as a Necrach, he's not exactly the strongest melee combatant Vampire Lord, he still is more than strong enough to deal with this guy, and probably more than strong enough to deal with most lords you're ever going to encounter in the game, to be honest. And yeah, look at that. Look at how much raised dead this guy has. And how much... yeah. So yeah, he's quite a strong one, really. He's not the strongest spellcaster in the Vampire Count's arsenal. That would go to Manfred, but as a supporting spellcaster, he is comfortably the strongest in the arsenal, thanks to his Greater Arcane Conduit, which is passively affecting everyone. So yeah, let's just see if we can get all the Doom Sorceresses and Witches. Yeah. So yes, as you can see, this obviously was a siege battle, and therefore they get completely wiped out when they've lost. But you can see from... yeah, you saw when we were actually running the battle how few of them I actually killed in the battle, because they all just broke and ran away immediately. But that is how that army plays. Now, because of the various improvements you can get from the bloodlines, all of these characters have 50% of their original upkeep, get 20% bonus replenishment, are immune to untainted attrition, and I receive a whole load of additional advantages as a result of the various other bloodlines. So I am paying only 30%, sorry, only 40% of the theoretical upkeep for each of these characters, and it still comes out as almost 5,000 dark magic per turn. Now, You can do this. You can't really decrease the price of this army any further. It's just not really doable. And as a result, this is one of those armies where you do need to plan a bit ahead, because when you start spamming a lot more armies, which people do tend to do with vampire counts, because it is a very efficient way of playing the game, this army does get extremely expensive. As I mentioned, 25,000 dark magic per turn when I had all of my armies running around, and that was just this. Isabella does make each vampire a significantly stronger duelist, but at the same time, the lack of ability to immediately attack cities makes her less valuable, and the Necrach Vampire Lord's inherent bonuses to Winds of Magic mean that they get a whole lot more mileage out of their magic. I would say this army is less powerful than the Lizardman stack that I showed earlier. Showed in my last video, mostly because each vampire, although they are incredibly strong fighters, and thanks to their leadership shenanigans, they're never going to have to really take on too much when they don't want to. They just aren't. They are quite squishy. So if you can get, because I mean, look at this one. There's 25% missile resistance, 20% physical resistance, and 10% ward save. And I do believe that's one of the highest set of resistances. 35%. Yeah. So at most, again, if everything lines up against missiles, they've only got about 40% ward save each against missile attacks. And obviously, compared to the ward saves and missile attack abilities of the Lizardman army, they are significantly weaker. However, the vampires are also capable of dishing out a whole lot more damage, thanks to their more effective laws of magic for spells, and thanks to just the raw balls to the wall power that you get in a Vampire Lord. I'm not going to say that this is the only way you can play it. I personally quite like having the Red Duke or Isabella von Carstein as the leader of this, but I do think that overall a Necrach Vampire Lord is probably the strongest option, just because of how you will be dishing your damage out, because it will be in the form of magic rather than melee attack. Finally, the other reason that this is a weaker army than the Lizardman army is because, unlike for the Lizardmen, the Sword of Cain does rather cripple you. The Curse of the Sword of Cain, taking away 8 public order from all provinces, is significantly more damaging for the vampire counts than it is for the Lizardmen, as vampire counts don't really have many ways to raise the public order of their provinces. And as a result, while this army is extremely strong and probably the more damaging of the two armies, it also has by far the worst effects on the rest of the faction. However, this does not have to be every single vampire hero in your army, in your faction. As you can see down here, there are plenty of other heroes floating around, because the vampire counts are able to get a pretty much infinite number of vampires in their armies, thanks to this skill down here. So second ability, hero capacity +1 for vampires. So you could have a single settlement and field this army, and that wouldn't be a problem at all. So, hope you all enjoy. That's the second video on it. I just wanted to get this out before Twisted in the Twilight comes around, because this video has been a complete pain to try and make. Trying to actually get this campaign forward when every turn takes about 6 hours has been exhausting, but hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hopefully this has given you some ideas moving forwards for after the Twisted in the Twilight. And yeah, it is fun having armies like this. I do enjoy it, but it was a real trek to actually get here. So anyway, on that note, I think I will finish there. Have a good day, everyone, and enjoy.